It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years' experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution. We're coming to you live from the world headquarters of Remodel Revolution, from deep in the heart of the great state of Texas, the greatest place to live in the world, except for possibly close, there could be a close second, I'll say that, would be sunny Southern California, who have, that's where you have like the perfect weather year round anyway. Today we're going to have a new friend of the show on, and we're going to do a new segment. It's a regional report for remodeling, and the idea of it is I wanted to talk to people around the country and get a sense of how the migration in the country and sort of all the things that have been going on are affecting all of us in different parts of the country. So I know that we all have our certain kind of challenges, and regionally, it really affects us regionally as well as locally. Now, this really, really makes a difference in a place like California because they have such stringent and just amazing code changes all the time. And eventually, a lot of those work around to the rest of us in the country over time. So I want to introduce our first guest, Sheen Fisher. Sheen's a contractor in San Diego, California. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Alex. I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you for being patient with us while we work through a few technical issues. And I know it's kind of early there for you, and I appreciate you getting up. I have a couple of other guests on the West Coast that refuse to get up this early. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Well, people always say that to me, but it's a little after 8 o'clock in the morning here, and it's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime for a builder, isn't it? You've probably already been yelled at by a homeowner. No, I'm kidding. Your homeowners don't yell at you.
I do all the screaming on my job.
You do all the screaming before 10.
On behalf of my homeowners.
There you go. You're the advocate. Okay, so California is crazy. I mean, I love it. It's crazy cool, crazy good, all that, but it's crazy. What are some of the new codes that you're having to deal with on the West Coast?
You're right. It's a little nuts. They write laws that contradict other laws, codes that contradict codes. So the one that we most recently ran into, two different final inspections on two completely different projects in two completely different municipalities that were both failed because we didn't have AFCIs and GFCIs on every circuit. And when I say every circuit, it now means on appliance circuits, which, for those of you in the know, you understand that a refrigerator, for instance, with 12 hard startup amps certainly runs the risk of tripping an AFCI or a GFCI breaker, which is built to trip at lower amps than a normal breaker. So that's really the one that just went into effect, that we just found out about. And again,
so every circuit in the house has to have a GFCI?
Either an AFCI, which is the breaker in the panel that had the button, or a GFCI, which is the button on the outlet itself.
Is that a universal code or international code requirement?
I haven't even had a chance to look it up yet. It happened very recently. So by and large, California, abides by the International Building Code and the National Electrical Code, that type of stuff. So I do not know if those are written into those manuals, but I know that's a code that seems to be fairly universal, at least in Southern California, which probably means the state of California. And it's not uncommon for California to write to expand on codes that may not have been adopted nationally or internationally, and sometimes those trickle back up, if that makes sense.
Well, they've been sort of phasing that code in here for a couple of years now, and it's been Very interesting in the remodeling world, of course, because you're dealing with existing conditions, existing circuitry. And we now have some cities requiring that we upgrade it. And that's expensive.
It's very expensive, and it's a burden on the client, as all of these things are, right?
Mm-hmm.
The inspector comes out, tells us what to do. We can't just do it and pay for it, so we have to go to the client and explain to them what the issue is and how it needs to be resolved, and then give them obviously a cost to do it. So it is burdensome, and with the understanding that, look, most of these codes are written for safety reasons. They are trying to protect people and from I suppose incidents that have occurred, but it doesn't make the burden any less financially.
Well, what happens is you end up having to compromise on other things you want to do, and so that change may take away from something decorative or maybe some upgrade the client wanted to do, and they're going, well, now we can't do that. So that really, to me, that's how it affects it as much as anything for most normal remodels that are on a budget.
Well, there's another side of it too. It affects the trust. The ability as a contractor to go in and when you speak to the client, they trust what you're saying, right? When you come back to them, hey, look, apparently there's a new code that we didn't know about. Well, gee, why wouldn't you know about every code? That's a whole conversation.
Let me bring my 3-inch code book over to you.
Exactly. Which, by the way, is not up to date because nobody knows about this.
That's right. Well, the funny thing is, and I learned this as a young contractor, and it just made me so mad. And I don't know how they do it in California, but here in Dallas, we were never ever notified of code changes. You had to find out. You had to figure it out. You would submit a set of plans or call for an inspection, and they'd say, well, that's not to the current code. And you go, well, no one told me there was a change. How am I supposed to know this?
Well, the interesting thing on these is it wasn't on the plans. Both these sets of plans that I'm specifically speaking about were approved in 2020. The final inspections took place in 2021. Now, generally, they are not supposed to impose a new code on you. The code that was in effect when the plans were approved would be applicable. But again, two different inspectors in two different municipalities imposed the exact code. We got on the phone with our electrician one day after the other. It's like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know either, So
that's the human part of remodeling, right? That's the part where you're dealing with the homeowner, the trades, the contractor. Everybody is kind of in the same boat on that one, and we all kind of have to fight through it together. So let's talk about something else in Cali. On the West Coast, how is it sounds like if we read the paper or watch the news, everybody's bailing out of there. And there's this mass migration to Texas. Of course, we've changed some of our signs on the highways, and we put a big left arrow right when you get to the state line. Turn left here to go to Texas. Kidding. We love people. How is the population and the migration numbers in California, and how is that affecting your business, if it is?
Well, look, as a guy that's lived here 30 years, I haven't noticed, of course we have 2020, which is kind of hard to judge population by walking out on the street these days, right? Historically, people went north. For the last 10, 15 years, Californians were going to Oregon and Washington, but things are not much better up there, and the weather really sucks.
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine just moved to Texas, so I'm aware of the Texas migration. I would say it's probably in the metropolitan areas. It's so overpopulated here that you don't really, it's like, taking a couple specks of dust off the pile of dirt. Right. That said, we have a severe overpopulation issue here. We have a severe affordable housing crisis, a severe housing crisis in general. And one of the more exciting things that we've seen the last couple of years is the state of California has mandated the building of accessory dwelling units or granny flats. It's a big part of our business now, and a lot of contractors are getting into it.
Explain exactly what that is. What a
So
granny flat is.
an accessory dwelling unit can be either an attached or a freestanding unit. It needs to be a self-sufficient unit, has to have a kitchenette, has to have sanitary facilities like a bathroom, has to have a place for somebody to sleep, obviously. It's a place where a person can live independently. Historically, especially along the southern or the coastal portions of California, they were not you just didn't bother designing and submitting one for permits because it would lead to increased rental units, increased population along the coastal areas that certainly didn't need them. So up till about 2 or 3 years ago, you kind of laughed if somebody said, hey, I want to build a granny flat, which is a more common name for it. So now the state of California, and I believe they've gotten this one right, and they continue to get it right. They set a minimum standard for what is required to qualify to build an accessory dwelling unit. It includes reduced setbacks, all kinds of reduced requirements that the municipalities now have to adopt as minimums. Many of the municipalities have gone overboard, have not only adopted them, but have also said, hey, look, you get 0 setbacks, you have no fees. They've actually pre-approved certain floor plans.
What inspired all of this change? What brought this about?
Well, because the belief is, and I think it's an accurate belief, is that by allowing people to build on property that they already own without having to improve that property in any other fashion, in other words, no new electrical meters, no new water, you can feed directly off the existing utilities of the main house. It becomes more affordable for people to build units that they can then rent, long-term rent, or have their family members, children, whatnot, move into and provide affordable housing and more plentiful housing.
Mm-hmm.
So along with this change also came quotas from the state for the municipalities. So over the course of the next 20 years, municipalities have certain quotas that they have to hit.
Very interesting.
To prove that they are providing X amount of affordable housing in their respective areas.
Well, Dallas went the same direction in the late 90s that you were at, where they just said no secondary buildings. They would refer to it as multifamily, and they were trying to prevent rentals. And then I don't know the situation right now, but I think that it's. I couldn't do a pool house unless I could prove that it wasn't going to be a rental property. I think that, I have my opinions about that, which don't matter to the city, but I think that it's a great thing, and it's enabling more people, more housing, and California needs it super, super bad, and we're getting to the same place. So all in all, how do you feel about the health and the vibrancy of the remodeling industry in Southern California right now?
Right now, it's amazing. I don't know anybody that's not busy. I don't know anybody that can that's complaining. I've been in the business 30 years. At the end of March of last year, when the quarantine came down, I thought we were out of business. Instead, we ended up having the best year that I've had in 30 years.
Wow.
2021 is shaping up the same way. Well, what we get, right, as remodel contractors specifically, and I've had this conversation 20 times, if not more, you walk into people's homes and they're like, well, now that this has happened once, now that we know they can shut the world down, we know that it'll probably happen again. And next time it happens, I don't want to be sitting around thinking about the project that I should have done 5 years ago, which would make it much more comfortable to live through this.
Are you seeing a lot of difference in what people are asking you for as far as the type of rooms or the type of redos that they're wanting to do?
No, what we see a difference is frankly, it's, and again, this may be the first time in 30 years I've ever experienced it. I can't remember another time, is that it's a seller's market. Right now, all of the good remodel contractors and even the bad remodel contractors are so busy. And the prospective clients are starting to figure it out, like when they make 10 phone calls and don't get a return call.
Right.
It's become and especially for us good guys, the ones that are trying to do it right. Look, we're not out there trying to stick it to people, but it's nice to be able to pick and choose your projects, and it's nice to be able to say, just do it the way that it really should be done. Take a lot of the extraneous considerations that homeowners bring to the table, in different times.
Well, it probably affects everybody, the homeowner and the contractor similarly, where it sort of forces everybody to focus on the right way to do it. I mean, you and I've had to explain to so many people over the years. I know we have, because we're in the same business, and there's some sort of general things that are consistent throughout the universe in remodeling. And one is, I can't give you the best job you can get cheap. You have to be realistic about the cost. You have to be realistic about the time. And then you have these times when we're all just saturated with business, and you can't control all of the things that are coming your way. And now in California, it's not so much weather, or in San Diego, it's not so much weather. In Dallas, it is. There's weather, and then there's labor and materials and things like that. And that's going to lead to my last question today. How are your labor and material challenges, or do you have them at this point?
Oh, yes. There was a point in time where we couldn't get OSB. A few months back, when the riots were happening, all the OSB was bought up by people trying to board up their windows. Everything from appliances to windows, very, very difficult to get out here. Matter of fact, we're taking delivery on a job site today for appliances we don't need for 3 months, but if we don't take them today,
get them now, yeah,
and not get them. So yeah, everything's slower out here. With everybody being busy, we can't make a phone call today and get a guy lined up for Friday. We make a phone call today, and hopefully we can get them lined up for next Friday.
Right.
Type of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're all, I think we're all facing labor challenges for sure. And it's not only just, can you get them there? Can you get somebody that's qualified to do the job? Something better than a warm breathing body.
Right.
I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your morning or your mid-morning to visit with us today. And I hope we can do this again in the future, in the near future. And Sheen, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Have a great day. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to Kansas City, Missouri. We'll be right back. The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. Imagine this, a totally customized, organized, and beautiful master closet. A home office that fits right into a perfect space. A pantry designed specifically for your storage needs. Imagine your home totally organized. It's time to call the design professionals at Closets by Design DFW and turn your dreams into a reality. With a design staff over 30 strong, Closets by Design works directly with you to create your dream space, and they build it locally, helping support the DFW community. Check them out at dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010. Use the promo code RRV to find out about the amazing specials and discounts available. That's dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010. And don't forget that promo code RRV, Closets by Design. One of the first things that a lot of homeowners have to tackle with their houses is siding replacement. I do it so often. And part of it is that for years, they were putting such crappy siding on houses, and it absorbs water like a sponge, and it rots like moss. So I found the perfect person for us today out of Kansas City, Missouri, Mr. Stephen Glaze. He is a professional siding specialist and contractor. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Alex. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I end up replacing lots of siding, and there's two real different things that I find that I've noticed over the years. And one is when we're talking about production houses versus custom homes, and the quality of really what I look at is what's behind the siding.
Mm-hmm.
And so why don't you give us an idea of what exactly, let's start from the beginning. When does a homeowner need to get concerned about siding enough that they may think it may need to be replaced, or have someone like you look at it?
Well, usually it starts with, they start to see some wood rot is usually where it starts, or when they go to, the paint is faded, and so then they start to go look at repainting. And so I would say people, come to us to reside their home for one of two reasons. Either one, it's a necessity that the wood is just rotted out and they've got it, painting it and repairing it is just not really an option. It needs to be replaced. The other person that comes to us is someone that the siding is not rotted out because they've taken good care of it, but they also plan on staying in the home for a long time. And so the cost of maintaining that siding and, repainting it every, 3 to 5 years or however often they do it, it starts to look like maybe if I went with something that was more, required less maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
and came pre-finished, it might make sense to replace it with something along those lines.
What are I failed to mention at the opening, Stephen is an author. He has authored a book about siding. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted him on here. We like smart people on our show.
Thank you.
And so we'll talk about your book in a few minutes. But one of the things that has changed so much is when we went through this phase in the building industry, and it really seems to me it started, at least in my world, around the late 80s and 90s, when they were doing all sorts of experimental things that were, it's fake, but it looks like this, and
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and use, and it's cheap. It's really cheap, builder. Go ahead and use it.
Right.
Let's talk a few minutes about some of the things that you've noticed that have changed from maybe the last 25, 30 years in product availability, and how much better things are now.
Well, in our market, the new construction is dominated by engineered wood, LP Smart Side.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you mentioned, there's a big difference between that product pre-1996 and post-1996. So prior to 1996, the way they did that is they would take the each individual wood chip and they would press it together and with glue, and they'd make a board out of it. And then they'd treat the exterior of that board for rot and seal it up so that it wouldn't absorb any moisture or whatnot. And then what they found was once they went to install that board, they would cut it and that would open it up right up, and then water would get in the seams or wick up underneath it and get behind it, and it would just absorb that water like a sponge, like you first spoke about, and it would just rot out from the inside. And so it was a real big problem. There's all kinds of class action lawsuits, and it
And
was not
one
good.
problem with that type siding, just I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but while
yeah.
I'm thinking about this, one problem with painted siding is that just like in a lot of termite damage, you don't see it. You know, the paint, it gets up to the back of the paint,
Mm-hmm.
and a rot. You can't see it until you see
Right.
it bubbling. I mean, eventually you'll see the damage, but
Yeah, by the time you do see it, it's really bad,
mhm.
and it's too late. And so with that particular product, they reformulated. I think they've got a pretty good product now. LP. What they do now is they take each wood chip and they coat it in a marine grade resin, and so it's all waterproof basically, and they press that together, make a board. You still need to seal it when you cut open, but it's got more protectant for that type of rot and stuff. So, and that's what we see a lot of on new homes and non-custom built homes or siding that hasn't been replaced. That's usually what we're seeing a lot of. Or you got the old masonite stuff that's just basically,
Awful.
yeah, just
Nothing good to say about it.
just bad. And that stuff is real bad. So that usually we have to take off completely and then put up new plywood, which is basically your OSB, your LP smart side, and then install our product, which we do a lot of different types of siding. I mean, we sell a lot of James Hardie fiber cement. We sell some high quality vinyl. We do sell some LP smart side. There's some other products that we've gotten into a little bit that talking about like PVC and cellular PVC and things like that. So we do a little bit of everything. I don't know if there's one product that's just the perfect solution for every home. But
I've noticed over the years, like I've tried all of them, like you have, and when they first came out and they're selling them, they're pitching them to us, to the builder. I know they believe in their product, and so I don't think anybody's doing anything nefarious. But I know that there's a lot of times when it's a brand new product, it just has problems. For
Yeah.
instance, they came out with the I guess it's I don't know what it is, plastic or plastic type trim and siding for the outside of houses, and it shrank. It shrank a quarter of an inch, and people would go, well, it's plastic. How can it shrink? Well, all of these things still react to hot and cold, regardless of what they're made of. But we went to, and I think because of great marketing, we went to these cementatious, this hardy type stuff. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is not so much that I've never been a huge fan of the product, but I can't get, or I've had too many problems getting people to install it correctly. That's been the problem with it.
that is the issue. So quite honestly, that's the reason we stayed away from James Hardie as long as we did, is because as a business owner, I just didn't feel comfortable, with the guys that I had to install that hadn't done it before. And so unless they were going to, spend a lot of time training and effort and doing all of that, and I just wasn't going to do that, because if you got a guy, that takes one shortcut, he's making $20 an hour and he decides one day he's not going to install it exactly to manufacturer specifications, and then 3 years later that cost me $35,000 because I got to reside their house. I just wasn't a risk I was willing to take. Or some of these other products, they're a little more forgiving if you don't install them to manufacturer specifications. Now since then we've hired some great crews that have had 20 years experience installing James Hardie, and they're certified installers, and they go through the training every year, continuing education. And so we've really gotten into it, but that is the issue. It's a great product, but it has to be installed to manufacturer specifications or it will fail.
You mean you can't nail it up with a trim gun?
No. You can't do that. You definitely have to, adhere to your clearances, 6 inches off the ground, 2 inches off the roof, all of those things. And, the guys, they carry a shoe polish bottle full of paint. So every time they make a cut edge, they're touching that up and
Mhm.
sealing it. And you've got to do all the things to install it correctly. And if you do, it's a great product. But there
It's
are
a
products
hard
that are
thing getting these guys to understand the the things that they need to do with all of these products, because I think a lot of it is that they're not really responsible for the end result, or the result 2 or 3 years down the road like we are. And so it's also a lot of change for the contractor to have to learn these. Now, I grew up in an era where we cut wood, you know. So
right.
we had good wood, we cut it, we put it up, we painted it, and it lasted, 60, 70 years. We were replacing wood that had been there 100 years. And now, one of the things with siding, one of the real issues with siding is what it's on. So a lot of the production houses built in the 80s and 90s, and maybe before then, they put that siding, that masonite siding, that's what they were all using for a while, and they put it right on the studs. And often I'll pull it off and there wasn't even paper behind it. They just plopped it right up on there. And you can tell a difference. Now, I'll go in and put something behind that. I'll put OSB, or I'll put an OSB, a new product, an LP product that's an OSB with a little foam on it, which is a fantastic product. And it really changes the performance of the house, because you don't realize, as a homeowner, you're living with this stuff. You don't realize how much wind is blowing up in those walls and how it's affecting the performance of your house. Some of these siding products tell you, oh, you don't have to put anything behind them. You can just put them right on the studs. I know Hardy told us that for a long time, and maybe it's right. Maybe that's what you don't have to do. What is your sort of rule of thumb when you're dealing with that situation?
So the only product that we would nail directly to studs would be the LP smart side panel, and it has to be the strand where it's structural, and because basically that is like plywood, and so that's what we would put house wrap up over the studs and insulation, and then we would install that product. But every other product, including James Hardy, we will not nail it direct to studs. We have to put it over something solid. I'll tell you, you talk about horror stories. We did a job where we were replacing vinyl, tearing off vinyl siding and putting up James Hardy. And I took off the vinyl siding and it was nailed direct to studs with no foam insulation, no house wrap, nothing. Like literally I'm looking at the batts insulation and their sheetrock behind this vinyl siding. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So we, and of course we put up the OSB 1/2-inch plywood, all the way around, and then installed our house wrap. And sometimes we'll install insulation and then house wrap and then the siding. Sometimes we'll just do the house wrap and then the siding over the, but it has to be solid surface. We don't go direct to studs.
So your advice to a homeowner who's thinking about doing his own or her own siding replacement, what is your advice to someone that's thinking, well, I just don't want to pay Stephen Glaze. I can do this myself.
Well, I certainly wouldn't do it yourself. That is the issue. I mean, even our guys, there's so much, it's hard to find a good carpenter that is also good with metal and flashing. Benny has a metal brake, can make it look right as far as flashing where the roof wall connections, flashing around all of the windows when you take it, the trim off, and we flash it and we seal tape with the house wrap. There's just a lot of details. And they're so important. I mean, nailing the board up is the easiest part of the deal. It's everything that goes on and the prep work that goes into it before you actually nail the board to the wall that makes the difference. And if it's not done right, it's very, very expensive to fix it. And so I definitely would not recommend.
And you don't know it needs to be fixed until it's
too late. Exactly.
Huge problem. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And then, you're going to think that, the siding is bad. You're going to call the manufacturer out. The manufacturer is going to say, well, there's nothing wrong with the siding other than the fact that it wasn't installed anywhere near correct. And then, you're going to find that it would have been a lot cheaper to hire Stephen Glaze and Smart Exteriors. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Hire a professional, get it done, get it installed to manufacturer specifications.
I have run into, as a remodeling contractor, and I know you do too, lots and lots and lots of times I run into things on houses where I know that the somebody in charge at some point let the yard man do the repair work.
Yeah.
Repair job. And I know that because the prep wasn't right, or besides the fact it probably just looks awful. I know that it just wasn't done by a professional, and a professional getting paid a reasonable amount of money. And so I really do understand what you're saying. You know, it's the little things like flashing around windows, flashing walls, understanding how, water goes downhill, little things like that. Let's talk about your book. Tell us about your book and why you wrote it, and let's talk about what it is.
Well, I wrote a book. It's the Kansas City Guide to siding and siding replacement. And so basically, what I did was I wanted to try and get. I do a lot of research into these different products, and I talk to the manufacturers' reps, and I talk to installers, and I talk to distributors and things, and then also my personal experience in working with these products. And so what I tried to do was just get some of this information out of my head and onto paper, and so we just went through the different types of siding, and it's basically a very non-biased opinion of the pros and cons of each product. And we go through steel siding, engineered wood, fiber cement, and then the kind of the newer stuff is like the PVC and things like that. And so, and then natural just wood siding, and it's not a sales book. It's a informational book to where you just go through and you can kind of read through it and see the pros and cons, and then based on your situation in your house, and maybe try and figure out what would be the best fit for you. And so that's what I do. And I talk about cost in there and just pros and cons.
It sounds like it sounds like a book that would probably be good for any market.
Yeah, it is. Obviously we're based out of Kansas City, so we named it that, but it absolutely is. And anyone can go and download it for free. They can go to my website. It's smartextpros.com. Click on the siding tab, and there's a book that you can download for free, PDF version, and read through it. I've had a lot of people tell me that they found it very informational.
Fantastic. We'll get that up on our screen. We're having a little technical difficulties this morning. We couldn't get our lower thirds put in, but we intended to put that up there for you, but we couldn't get that done this morning. But I will get it up there when I edit the video.
Super. Appreciate it.
And well, I appreciate it. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I'm glad you're doing well, and I appreciate all the information on siding. I'd like to do this again soon. Particularly with spring coming up, and I would like to get some of your advice on you do other things as well. You do guttering and siding, and what all do you do on houses?
So it's the exterior. So our two big sellers are siding and gutter guards, gutter protection. We also do windows and doors, the gutters themselves, and roofing.
So this is about to become your busy time of year. Well, I'm sure you're always busy, but springtime leading into summer is when a lot of these projects people start thinking about it, particularly when it starts raining and
absolutely
snowing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's about to, like you said, we're always busy, but it starts to get even more busy as we move into the spring.
Yeah. Well, Stephen Glaze, thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. We really do appreciate it.
Alex, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, bud. Bye.
That was a fantastic interview. I love the idea of bringing this information to you, and we're going to keep doing it every week. I hope that you can check us out on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Remodel Revolution. Go to our YouTube channel and share it and subscribe and share these videos. Also, check out our podcast, Remodel Revolution. We podcast on Spreaker, but we're on all of the podcast channels. There's not literally nobody that we're not that I know of. There could be somebody. But check us out on the podcast, subscribe, And follow us on the podcast for our weekly podcast. It'll come right to you. Until next week, this is Alex Guthrie signing off.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment.
Okay.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to replace the recommendations of a hired professional. You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle at Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.